basically for time constraints couldn't have. But there's approximately sort of 5 operators you need to know. There is, for instance, the Google Hacking database, which has a lot of these queries. Some of them work, some of them don't, so you've just got to kind of update them from there. But any web page that you take, for instance, you write a web application, if you specify all the Google search parameters, you can then locate it as it's sort of leaking from there. So just to take me back to where we were, so while we have that ability to do individual search queries from a corporate standpoint and from a testing standpoint and a penetration testing standpoint too, we really don't want to look at the entire internet to find vulnerabilities only. We also want to find what content is leaking and obviously record a record of that content. Now, I'll cover these 2 operators now, but site essentially restricts search results to a specific domain, and then the cached operator basically will pull what has been indexed by Google within the actual Google cache itself. Okay, so with the site operator, as I mentioned before, it returns results specific to a domain. Now, we have 2 ways of using it. One is we can use it against a subdomain or a host, so in which case we can, if we add www in front of google.com, we can restrict our results to that host only. If we do site.google, as you can see, we not only get the more popular www.google.com, but we get video.google and a number of other sites. So essentially what you want to do is when you actually run a site query, is restrict it from running just at on the web server itself. You want to run it from the top level domain. But if you need to narrow your search results down, you can actually do that by specifying the various host or subdomain in front of it. So if we had a web page or a website and we wanted to see when content was added by Google, that kind of thing, we can actually use Google Alerts to do that. Now, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can do it just by specifying an email address, which is on the right-hand side of this slide here, or we can actually log on with our Google account and then manage the Google Alerts from there. So essentially what we just enter in is our search term, so it's site and whatever our domain is, then specify when we want the results. Generally, I prefer to get notified as soon as it occurs. And then from there we can specify the content from there. Now, what you can also do is, if you do actually have a web application that you're running on a number of different sites or for customers, that kind of thing, or you want to check that information isn't leaking, you can actually add it in there too using the various search operators and then using the individual search queries from there too. Okay, so the next operator, so once Google has come along and indexed our content, it's then stored within their cache. Now, to actually display the web page as it's indexed, we use the cache search operator. So in which case, the example here is the OWASP.org web page. We can actually include within the cache operator, if I was to write OWASP after that search query, we would get the highlight. Every OWASP or every text reference to OWASP there would actually be highlighted within the cache page itself too. So it does provide us with some function of pulling it through. One thing I will add though is the graphics themselves are actually downloaded from OWASP.org. So if you wanted to be anonymous when you're doing this, you would add the strip1 parameter to the URL in the address bar there. Okay, there is another way of actually finding it, and this is a combination of using the site operator and then locating the individual pages. So for that, what we would use is we'd run the site query, as you can see up the top there, and then the individual cache buttons we could click, and which would then give us the return result of what is here. So we'd have to do that for each individual web page. Okay, any questions? No. Okay, so I'll now cover which is, I guess, the main content or part of my talk, which is the download index cache tool, which essentially will do a site search of a particular URL or domain, and then from there it'll pull down each of the individual cache pages. So essentially what we use to achieve this is the Google Soap Search API. Now, in terms of actually programming to this API, our search query is actually limited to 10 words only. The latest estimation I have in terms of it running a search via the Google web interface is 34 words. So you can see you need to streamline your queries quite exceptionally to put them through. So if you're using queries, for instance, that have all or a lot of stop words, which are common English words, you need to trim those down or run them as multiple sort of recursive searches. The searches themselves are also limited. If within the 10 words, you can only use 2048 bytes within that. So it's possible even further to reduce the amount of words that you have available. Now, with each Google Soap Search API key, you're limited to 1,000 search queries per day, and you can only search up until the 1,000th search result. Within the API itself, it specifies the first result as 0, so that's why it's 0 to 99 there. So this provides us with up to 10,000 possible search results using 10 different search queries. So essentially, via the limitation of 1,000 search queries per day, which are limited to 1,000 results, you times that by 10 and you therefore get your 10,000 possible results. Now, the results are also possibly can be reduced also if you only have, say, 800 of your, there's only 800 search results returned, or a number less than 1,000 by Google. So it's driven by various SOAP messages. So the one here is to make the SOAP request, we use the doGoogleSearch SOAP message. This code is actually taken from the Perl script that's actually used to drive the download index cache tool. So what we have is a number of parameters that we specify when we do when we pass the doGoogleSearch message. So we have the key parameter, which is our Google Soap Search API key. We have our query, which is our Google search query, limited to 10 words or 2048 bytes. We have where we're going to start the query from in between the, so we don't have to start at 1, we can start at results 10, which is obviously 11 if you add the 1 to it, or we can start it at 990 and then reverse the results from there too, by just basically running it through a for loop and then subtracting from there also. We then can specify the maximum number of results we want returned with each query. Now you're limited to, you can either return one result and then run another doGoogleSearch query and get another single result from there, or you can get a maximum of 10 results each time. The tool itself is actually automatically configured to actually do maximum results of 10, just basically to not cost the API key